If you've ever spent time working with Amazon DynamoDB, you know that designing your data models, well, it can be a real head scratcher. But today, we're looking at a tool that completely changes the game. It helps you design, build, and query your tables way more effectively. So, let's get into it.
Right. Let's be real for a second. Modeling data for a NoSQL database like DynamoDB can feel super abstract. Unlike with traditional SQL, you have to think about your access patterns first. It often feels like you're trying to build this incredibly complex structure completely in your head, without any kind of blueprint to guide you.
But what if you could actually see that blueprint? What if you could visually design, test, and even refine your entire data model before you write a single line of application code? Well, you can. That tool actually exists. It's called NoSQL Workbench for Amazon DynamoDB. And the best part? It's a completely free client-side tool that runs on Windows, Mac OS, and Linux. It is designed from the ground up to help you with that entire development lifecycle, from the initial brainstorming all the way to managing live tables in the cloud. So how does it do all this? Well, the Workbench is really built on three core ideas, three pillars. First, you have data modeling. Second, there's data visualization. And third, you've got operation building. We're going to walk through each one of these. Okay, so let's dive right into that first pillar, designing your data model. This is all about getting your schema hammered out and feeling confident about it before you commit to anything. You can start with a totally blank canvas, or if you've got an existing model, you can just import that. And starting from scratch is honestly way easier than you'd think. You just pop open the data modeler, add a new table, and define your primary keys, your partition key, and maybe a sort key. From there, you just start adding all your other attributes. It's this guided, visual process that really helps solidify those core DynamoDB concepts in your mind. And this is huge. It is not a closed-off system at all. You can easily import and export your models, which is absolutely fantastic for sharing with your team and for version control. It supports its own format, but it also supports AWS CloudFormation, which is pretty much the standard for defining infrastructure as code. That makes it incredibly flexible. Now, as you're modeling, you're going to come across this unique idea called a facet. And listen, this is really important to get. A facet is purely a visual aid that exists only inside the Workbench. It is not part of DynamoDB itself. Think of it like a special lens that lets you view your data based on a specific question, like, hey, show me all the songs by this one artist. And this is where the magic really starts to happen. We're moving from that abstract design we had in our heads to something we can actually see and touch. The visualizer is where your data model and all those facets we just talked about really come to life. Of course, to visualize anything, you need some data, right? The Workbench gives you three great ways to do this. You can auto-generate thousands of rows of pretty realistic sample data. You can import a CSV file with your own specific test cases, or you can just add a few rows by hand to check on a very specific scenario. And this right here, this is the real payoff. By loading up your model with that sample data and then just clicking between the different facets you defined, you can visually confirm that your single table design is actually going to work for every single query your app needs to make. No more crossing your fingers and hoping for the best. Okay, so you're happy with your model. Now let's move on to the operation builder. At this point, you can connect to a real database, either a live one in the cloud or a local instance on your machine, and start building and testing actual live queries. And the Workbench gives you a couple of different flavors here. If you come from a SQL background and you're comfortable with that, you can use the PartyQL editor. It's a SQL-compatible language for DynamoDB. Or, if you'd rather have a more guided experience, the API Operation Builder gives you a point-and-click graphical interface to build out your operations. And this part is just packed with features that'll speed up your development. Once you build an operation you like, you can generate the code for it in Python, JavaScript, or Java, which is a huge time saver. You can clone tables between different environments, save your most common queries, and even export your results to a CSV file. It's pretty slick. All right, this is the grand finale. This is where it all comes together. We're connecting our local design to a live, running environment. You've designed the model, you've visualized your access patterns, you've tested your queries. So what's the last step? You're not going to believe how simple this is. Right from the visualizer, you just hit Commit to DynamoDB. You pick your AWS account connection, you click one button, and bam! The Workbench provisions everything for you. It creates your cables and any global secondary indexes you designed. The entire journey from an idea to live infrastructure is literally just a few clicks.
And this tool isn't just sitting still, it's constantly getting better. Since it was first released back in 2020, we've seen major updates, like built-in support for a DynamoDB local, and more recently, that super powerful table cloning feature. It just goes to show there's a real commitment to making the developer workflow better and better.
So, if we boil it all down, what's the big deal? NoSQL Workbench lets you design your database visually, taking all that guesswork out of single table modeling. It lets you build and test your queries with a great graphical interface, which really speeds up your development loop. And finally, it lets you deploy your schema seamlessly, bridging that huge gap between design and reality. At the end of the day, it's a free, cross-platform tool that can fundamentally change how you approach working with DynamoDB. So I guess the only question left is, are you ready to go supercharge your workflow?